Okay, chill. Rollo Tomassi is not a Christian. And I'll tell you why. So, in the Bible, let's read this one verse. Take in mind, he always curses and tells people they should hump girls, or they should always have sex with 1 billion women, and then he shames women for having sex with people, which is completely hypocritical. He's one of those red pill guys that tried to say he's a Christian just to bring in more Christian people, because mostly Christians are much more conservative, but most of them disagree with everything he says just because he's not a real Christian. Look at this verse. Whoever says, therefore I know him, but does not do what he commands is a liar, and the truth is not in that person. Those who live in Christ don't go sinning. Those who go on sinning haven't seen or known Christ. JD Sweets. Hello, ECE. Who is ECE? I mean, it's very simple. He's not a Christian because he does all these stuff, and then he just tries to say he's a Christian to draw more Christian viewers, which is malicious in my opinion. So let's see look at one of the things. Let's see him getting exposed almost in a way. Is it gonna play or not?
Rollo Tomassi, one of the self-proclaimed godfathers of the manosphere, author of 3 books, including The Rational Male and The Rational Male Religion. Now, I've addressed the red pill community quite a few times on this channel, and when I had my friend Hafiz from the Roommates on, it rubbed Rollo the wrong way, meaning he made a 2-hour response video to our conversation, and in it, he said he would only have a conversation with me if I read his book. So I did. And then my friend Adam Sauce from Valuetainment Money finally got the 2 of us in the same room to discuss this contentious topic of male and female dynamics and relationship. In this video, you'll see how one of the figureheads of the red pill community comes out about his religious beliefs and how they're in contradiction with the red pill community.
Bruce Lawn.
Something me and Rollo agree on that I didn't know we would agree on. We both believe in Jesus. So Rollo says that he is a Christian. He is also a follower of Christ. That's how he described himself. And that he believes in the divinity and physical resurrection of Jesus, who is the Christ as per the Abrahamic telling. So I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
I read the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
I read the whole book, and
Well,
I wanted to honor you in that way because
let me explain something really quickly to you. Like when you and I had our exchange on Twitter, thank you for doing me the courtesy, doing me the solid of reading that you're reading the book, because that right there saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
So when people tell me, oh, just give me the elevator pitch of the red pill, give me the elevator pitch of what you're talking about, it's like it's impossible to do that because it's so comprehensive. So it's easier for me. Like people criticize me for like linking old essays when they ask me questions. It's like, just read this essay. I already covered this, and they get really pissed off.
So he's doing the vegan thing where he can't simply explain his beliefs. Sure, your beliefs come from a huge pool of things you have interacted into your huge life, and it's crazy, of course, and of course there's a lot of things to explain in between, but you can just say, I believe this, you know, just because I believe it for this reason. You don't have to cover every single aspect of it just for a 1-minute conversation or such. Okay, because most people are not going to read your essays. I'm sorry. Ruslan certainly did, but most people are not going to.
At me for doing that because they want something like a sound bite. They want some sort of little info bite.
When I saw your reaction to my conversation with Hafiz, it was framed as if I was the ideologue, religious guy with no care for empirical evidence or data, which is just not true. And that's what I want to kind of get into, is that, one, we both believe in magical thinking, per your definition. We both believe in a risen man who died and physically rose from the grave.
I acknowledge the idea that magical thinking is both a positive and a negative.
Yes. Okay. So we agree that it's a positive. We agree.
For those of us that aren't clear on this, magical thinking.
It's a way he frames religion in the book. We agree on a lot. What we disagree on is marriage. That you can't endorse marriage.
Not now.
And I think that if we look at what is the optimal environment.
This guy has a 26-year-old marriage, and he refuses to endorse marriage, probably because of all his incel viewers, who often will get their stuff from Fresh and Fit and just want him dunking on women and just want him to endorse their lifestyle instead of actually sharing his real opinions. It's disgusting.
To bring children
Not
into this
Christian.
environment, into this world. If my buddy Sauce wanted to have kids, do you want kids?
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we could agree that the optimal environment is to be in a nuclear family where the man and the woman are in the household together.
Socially enforced monogamy has been the bedrock of Western society for a long time.
100%. So we agree on that. However, the red pill speaks very low of marriage. You guys have a very, in my opinion, a very skewed view of marriage.
Half of marriages end in divorce right now, at least in Western, but statistically speaking, you got a 50-50 chance of having a quote-unquote successful marriage, whatever that is defined as, and then with that.
So if the optimal environment is for kids, Sauce wants kids, is to be married in the same household.
With a husband and a wife.
With a husband and a
with
wife.
a man and a woman, however you define it.
Husband and a wife is fine. The painting of marriage is not helpful, in my opinion, based on what we know about marriage. So marriage is you do 90% of the work, she puts in 10%, and then she could file divorce at any time, and then you have to split all the proceeds. There's a lot you leave out there, Rollo, a whole lot. For starters, divorce highly correlated with income. The less you make, the more likely you are to get divorced. This is a fact. I got sources.
And it's commonly known that like one of the top two issues in divorce is or breakups is money.
It's money.
Sex and
It's
money.
money. And Dave Ramsey would say that number one reason people get a divorce is money fights money problems. Okay, so one, we know that the more people make, the least likely they are to get divorced. That's a fact. With the regards about 250K, you flatten out, I think, at about a 25% rate. So one, that's omitted from the fact. And then the response goes, well, alimony. Okay, if the average man, median income for the average man, take away the bottom and the top outliers, is about $60,000 a year. Okay, people aren't paying alimony on those types of salaries. So the average person is most optimally to thrive. And I can give you all the statistics about how being single, you're highly to be depression, all these unhealthy, lazy, all these different things. The optimal environment for a man is to be in a marriage. Okay, so
For kids, you mean?
For kids.
for his mental health. And
Okay.
again, and I got the studies. We can look at the studies if you want to look at the studies. Suicide rate, depression, unhealth, all kinds of different things. It's awful if you're a man in your 40s. So the red pill is framing marriage as this caricature that maybe on the contractual side there are outliers where women take advantage of men, but the average case is that if you know how to make money, if you understand some of the game side of things, I would say there's some utility. And I think what you guys do a good job is you stir people away from some type of women that are, in my opinion, selection biased. Sauce, you got married before, right?
Briefly, yes.
Yeah. And what did you do to protect yourself in that marriage?
Oh, I had a prenup.
You had a prenup, right? Dave Ramsey recommends prenups for anybody that's independently wealthy before they go into a marriage.
I
Dave
had
Ramsey
money,
is a
she
financial
didn't. Correct.
You got a prenup, and I protected you.
Yes.
Correct? I got buddies that have covenantal marriages per your book. Got a couple buddies. They got married. They kept the state out of it. They protected themselves, right? And so on and so forth. So I think primarily this caricature of marriage, man, is I think very toxic. On top of which you go on to glorify how being a virgin is ideal in a marriage, which is
For the woman?
for both people.
For the man, too?
For the man, we could correlate
Yes,
body
Adam.
counts.
You could.
Hold
you
on,
could,
what?
You could.
Yes,
Start
Adam.
the show,
we could
gentlemen.
correlate body counts.
This is
We
where
could-
I'm gonna start weighing here, gentlemen.
We could correlate body counts to less happiness in a sex life. The higher, more partners you have, the less likely you are to be happy in a marriage sexually. That's proven. I think
If you don't know what you're missing, if ignorance is bliss.
100%. So, and on top of it, and this is the part I'm probably most bummed about, and you identify as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, somebody, I'm bummed, Rollo, that you left out all the statistics about how unlikely you are to get divorced if you are a person of faith who practices their faith. Now, I know you're going to say that's the no true Scotsman argument. It's not. If you believe in earning wealth, you're going to do certain things to practice earning wealth. If you believe the Lakers are the best basketball team, you're going to wear a jersey and go to a game occasionally. If you profess to be a Catholic or a Christian, you do things that show that, and that you go to church, you pray, you do certain things. So when we factor all of these different variables together, the divorce rate plummets way, way, way off the ground. And that's the part, Rollo, that I'm like, man, this is such a caricature of marriage that I was really bummed out that you as a Christian didn't put any of this in there with the caveat. And I appreciated you putting the virgin thing in there because I thought that was fair of you. And that's the part where I go, man, if the optimal environment for our buddy Sauce is to one day get married, to have kids, why would we not tell him that? Why would we keep this information from him? Why would we omit this?
Is that your goal to do that? That's first and foremost is like, what do you want as a man right now? Because right now we're in the
Yeah, why are you not? I mean, why not?
21st century. We're 21 years into 21 and a half years into the 21st century. Okay. We're still clinging to old order ideals. We're still clinging to a 20th century, actually probably like a 18th century ideal when it comes to monogamy. We are not looking at it from a post-sexual revolution. And I'm saying for better or worse. I'm not saying this is, okay, I don't deal in shoulds, I deal in is. Okay?
But you do, though, because you prescribe very specific things in your book, The Rational Male. We can get into that later.
I understand
but
that.
you do prescribe things, Rollo.
I make a point to
Yeah,
be
he
as
does.
objective. I know
And
it's
then he starts
impossible to be
acting like he
entirely
does.
objective.
Right. You believe in objective truth.
They have an obligation to it.
But you prescribe certain
I don't
things.
prescribe anything. I don't.
Okay, we can come back to that.
So let me explain something.
Let him get this out.
Let me
and then
explain. Let me
we'll
explain
open
a
it
couple
up for
things here.
dialogue.
I'm not in the business of making men better men. I'm in the business of giving men the tools that they need to make better choices, to become better men themselves.
Let me just understand what you just said right there, and then I'll let you continue. It's almost like cause and effect. You said, I'm not here to help men be better. I'm here to give them the education to be
tools.
better. Well, it's the same
And
thing, isn't it?
tomato, Rollo. You were prescribing certain
there's
activities.
a big difference.
So
I'll
explain the
I'll
difference.
explain to you.
Go.
I'll explain to you why. Okay, I do not have a step-by-step program that says follow this template and you will have a great life. I have no.
Don't you not have a book? I mean, do they not read your book, your self-help book, to try to get self-help? Or am I missing something here? You're just being counterproductive. You're just going against yourself because you're trying to win the debate.
Nothing
Neither
like
do
that.
I. Neither
I'm
does
not, and
Sauce.
I'm
Neither
not
does
saying that.
PBD.
I'm not saying that you do. I'm saying that that's my approach when I write any book, when I do any show, when I write any essay. It's not about here's what you should do. Here's what is happening. What are you going to do with this information? Okay, it's like fire. Okay, you can use fire to heat your home and cook your food, or you can use fire to burn your neighbor's house down, and you can go and set your neighbors on fire as well. When I am talking about marriage, and you're not the first person to throw this at me, is that they say, well, Rollo, how can you be red pill because you're married, or how can you be married because you're red pill, right? And so I'm always stuck in the middle of all of that, because I have a great, by all estimates, I have a fantastic ideal marriage. For most guys would say it's an ideal marriage for 26 years. I have a kid, right? So when especially from the traditional conservative side of things, they come at me and say, well, how can you be so down on marriage? I'm not down on marriage. In fact, I make that point in religion. I said, I'm not down on marriage. I'm down on how we do it now.
But that's a sociological phenomenon. Like that's social culture that's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
and so
why
I don't follow culture, Rollo. I build culture.
Do you
right?
have a legal contract between you and your wife?
I do have a legal contract
Okay,
between
then you that's part of the culture.
Yes, that's a part of the culture because we chose to be that. I can get into why that is if you want me to. But when you're talking about people just brainlessly following culture, right? Like, I get it. That sounds like everyone's plugged into the matrix and acting like an idiot. I'm with you. The issue is that most people who want to be successful at anything aren't going to follow culture. Okay? If I come to you and I say, Adam, man, I want to double my income this year. You're going to give me a bunch of countercultural examples of how to do that. Correct?
Countercultural?
Don't go out and party every night. Don't play video games.
Don't take on student loan debt. Don't just do the typical 9 to 5.
All of that is
Yeah.
countercultural.
The very fact that you're an influencer disqualifies any of that. The very fact that you're on, do you make more money as a rapper, or do you make more money as an influencer right now?
Right now, as a YouTuber.
Then you're following culture.
Okay, but
Even
I'm
as a
building
rapper,
culture.
you are.
No, but I'm
explain
building
that.
culture.
Why is that?
Yeah, explain the difference between the two of those. You both make money off of users on the internet, which like to follow the culture, but how is there a difference in both of those? Explain, please. You're just being idiotic and showing your stupidity right now.
Well, I'm saying that our idea.
This guy should not represent Danes. Okay. I see that necklace. I know this guy's name is Rollo. I know that he is Danish. But me, myself, being the better Nordic, I do know. I do know. he's idiotic.
Idea of what it is we want to do, our passions in life, and everything is like I rail against social constructionism. I get that part of it, right? But the very fact that we're even on this show with all these cameras around us, or Patrick's over here,
you're saying
doing
that
this,
he'd be more counterculture if he said, "I don't do social media."
If he was counterculture, he'd be in a punk band.
No. I said the things that it requires to be successful.
You are stupid. Just because you have a couple of things that are countercultural doesn't mean that everything about you needs to be countercultural and like anti-everything, anti-establishment. You can have one belief set without believing the whole thing. And let's talk about your Christianity of that. If you have to do everything, this is a thing where you actually have to put your all in, put God first. That destroys your argument because you're doing the opposite. You're cursing. You're having sex outside your marriage. You're encouraging other people to have sex outside their marriage and not being a good leader, going against the Bible and being a hypocrite, an absolute hypocrite. 4 sins that you do regularly. So why are you trying to say that he can't be countercultural in some areas, but when you're in Christianity where you have to be all in, you have to put God first because Jesus died for your sins. And then you're not all in that, and you're saying he has to be all in a little concept that does not require you to be all in. I'm losing my brains. You're making me lose my brain cells for how idiotic you are.
Anything is countercultural, Rollo. And so as a person that's creative, I have to make countercultural decisions to be not the average.
But you have to work within that culture.
I do have to do that. But let me give you an example. You mentioned something in your book about Christians jacking culture, right? And you talked about what was the Striper band and all that kind of stuff, right?
It's the Christian kosher.
Christian culture. I like that. I like that a lot. But you made this one really example, and I think this kind of speaks to this. You reference J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings influencing Dungeons and Dragons. And then you also reference C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, which is to you a spinoff. J.R.R. Tolkien led C.S. Lewis to faith. J.R.R. Tolkien who's a Christian, built Lord of the Rings and led culture that then the world, Dungeons and Dragons, and non-Christians followed. So I think you miss how much I think is driven by art creativity within modern music, within Lord of the Rings and all these sorts of things. That your example was often that that was led by a Christian who led C.S. Lewis, and he was building culture. And I'm saying there's other examples of people doing that all throughout history. But to be successful at anything, we have to be countercultural with our choices while we engage culture to further our messages.
But I don't want to skip over the marriage thing.
I'll explain. You've heard this before. I'm sure I forget. I think it was maybe it was Warren Buffett who said, the most important decision you can make in your life is like who you're going to marry. You're going to pair yourself
talks about
with.
that all the time,
right? So it's not just about you and the woman. It's about the families you created, the families that come together on either side. It hinges on one thing. Intersexual dynamics. It hinges on being able to come together and having that knowledgeable database. I'm not against marriage. I'm against marriage in the sense that it's like didn't know it was coming, didn't know the risks, didn't know this, didn't know all the downstream effects that could come from it, because you have this romantic ideal in your head that, oh, she's the one. And most guys live in a state of sexual scarcity. So the first girl that gets off with him, suddenly she's the one, ordained from God to be his wife for forever.
Now, do you think there's any selection bias, though, in the way you're describing some of these women in terms of the culture?
If there's a bias, it's a post-sexual revolution bias for the last 4 generations where we're at.
For some women, not all women.
In some effects, all women, and some effects, some women. Okay, so I made this point with Jedediah yesterday. Is like, if you were born after, say, like 1960
You're
right now, you have had gynocentric feminist ideals planted into your brain that you think are just given truths. You think that they're self-evident truths. Whereas if you were born in a generation prior to the sexual revolution, it would be like, you're like, what are you talking about?
Right, that's fair. You may prescribe marriage with some reforms. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, I did say that monogamy was the bedrock of Western civilization.
And we agree on that.
Absolutely. How that is formalized is really kind of particular to the society, the religion, the guys.
Sure. And so I would take the stance that I want to tip the scales as much in Sauce's favor as I possibly can if he wants to get married.
We're going to get you married, Sauce.
I appreciate it. I mean, you two by my side.
He wants to have kids. So now, what I would call your